working together for quite some time now, creating dances and music sort of in partnership with each other and in a real true collaborative sense. This fall, you're doing something based on a murder story. How salacious. Tell me about that. Tell me the story and how you came upon it.
I think how we came upon it a little bit was some of John's research when looking at particular ballads that are out there in the North Carolina culture and the Appalachian culture. And there's a subgenre of ballads called murder ballads, and they're based on notorious murders. And there was a particular murder that happened in Winston-Salem in 1883, I believe. And so there's a song called "Poor Ellen Smith," and we thought, well, you know, that's something that we could do some research on. It has local culture, and then yet it still reflects a little bit upon the popular culture and how they're very interested. If you're watching TV nowadays, it's all about forensics and who murdered who and how do we discover who the murderer was. And it's like, well, there's so much interest in these dark subjects, and it's like, so we thought, well, let's create something for the audience that can incorporate some of the local culture and then yet the interest of the popular culture too. So that's sort of how we started getting in on this.
Who's Ellen Smith? What's her story?
Ellen Smith, like E.E. said, the events that our piece "Poor Ellen" talk about are or reference to are happened in 1883, Winston-Salem, and there's sort of what we know is that there's Ellen Smith, who's this woman in Winston-Salem. She is murdered by Peter de Graaf, and the interesting thing about this murder ballad is that it's told by actually the murderer. It's in the first person, and so it's him and how he feels about what happened. We can look back at the records of the population and know these people were there. And what we really know from the story is basically that there was Ellen Smith, and she was killed by Peter de Graaf. Peter de Graaf went on the lam for a year and a half, actually wandered back through North Carolina. They grab him, put him in jail. He spends the majority of his life in jail because of this murder. And so it's while he was in prison that he supposedly came up with these lyrics to this song. We don't know for sure whether that's true or not, whether it was actually Peter de Graaf that wrote them, but it is one of the rarest instances in murder ballad that it's in the first person. And it never really talks about what he did. He talks about the regret he has for this event having happened. He doesn't say it happens. He doesn't say what he did. He just says he regrets that Ellen Smith was killed.
So there's no confession, actually, in the ballad.
Not at all.
Your piece refers to there being an element of romance there. Were they in love, or is that something that you guys created, or did you find that in your research?
Well, as artists, we sort of get artistic license, and so we don't really know what their relationship was. It could have been, we know that there was no formal relationship, there was no real courting there, and so there's some speculation Peter de Graaf may have at some point raped her and killed her because she became pregnant because of that. He may have been engaged to another woman but then had an affair with her, and so we're not quite sure. And so at least in our piece, what we've come to is there's some conflict of their multiple women, actually sisters, who are vying for his attentions, and eventually poor Ellen and Peter de Graaf pair and court, not formally, but there's some sort of courting that goes on, and so it's a little bit hazy, so we get to fill in the blanks.
So taking that artistic license as a choreographer, we get to cast a certain amount of dancers, and we get to cast the particular characters. And I've been using my dance company and these professional dancers. So we set it up so that Ellen actually has two sisters in the dance. So you have a trio going on there. I play Peter, and you see the ongoing kind of courtship that might happen and the possible what happened and why did she get killed and what happens after that. So it's a little bit of a dark story, but it's very intriguing and engaging. yet to watch and to hear the beautiful, beautiful string quartet that John has written.
And what was the process of this whole thing? Did you do the research and then together come up with a storyline, or did you start working on music and then you heard some of the music? And I mean, what was the order of creation?
This collaborative partnership, as you mentioned, has been going on for years, and so we're always trying to figure out new ways to make this partnership make more intense art, make more meaningful art. And so with this one in particular, there was the story, knowing that we were doing something based on Poor Ellen Smith was the starting point. But at some point there has to be music written for the choreographer to choreograph. So that's a concrete chronology that's there. The difference is I have to let E.E. into my compositional process early on so that he can have an impact knowing where this is going later. And so the best way to describe it is in our conversations, I start working on a theme or an idea that hopefully does not end at the end of in hearing the piece of music, but it starts a trajectory that then plays itself out in the choreography that comes later. And so as a dramatic arch or dramatic movement, it starts with our conversation that generates music that then continues, and so we're all that whole piece we're hoping there's a seamless transition from where my part of the collaboration ends and where E.E.'s begins. And then hopefully and E.E. has me in rehearsals where I talk about, this is an important musical moment. If there's an alignment there, that would reinforce what's going on musically with motion.
Do you ever get in arguments? You say, that's not what I really meant.
Not yet.
Not
no,
yet.
I don't think we have. But I do want to mention, too, that as it's been about 5 or 6 years we've been collaborating, as he's described our collaboration, what's happened now is sometimes there's this dance with no music, and then the music comes later, and then I show him, here, look at all this movement, and then you write the music. So now it's going back and forth. So we're really
it's
looking at each other's material before we hear or see anything.
Mm-hmm.
Well, we really look forward to seeing this particular piece, but also the future collaborations, because I know with such a rich past, you guys must have many projects on the horizon.
We do.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Thank you.